Well, hi and welcome if you're here. I'm Steele Wagstaff, and I'm introducing the concept or topic of accessibility at Pressbooks, and we're talking about inclusion. So welcome midstream to what we've been talking about. I wanted to just share that for us at Pressbooks, accessibility and inclusion are, in fact, core to our mission. We try to make them daily practices. Accessibility and inclusion have to be daily commitments and ongoing practices, not just a one-time checklist. You don't just go through your WCAG checklist once and say, we're done. We will talk about going through a one-time checklist, and that's part of the process, but we understand it's larger and more holistic and much more than that. And we know that you understand that too. We aspire, yes, we need to understand and conform to all of the relevant accessibility guidelines. And we also believe that we need to find ways to address the needs of people who have been excluded, historically marginalized, or have been harmed by our existing systems. This we talk about this sometimes about moving our attention to what we call the edges of the human starburst. It's a really lovely phrase from you to Trevor. I'm going to mispronounce the name because I'm nervous, but at the Inclusive Design Research Center, a big leader in the Canadian idea of inclusive design. At Pressbooks, we try to do this by employing inclusive design practices and processes when we're building our software products or supporting our community. You can read a lot about this work on our blog. I think Jen can post a link to this. Jen's written quite a lot about this and some of the practices and some of the things we've learned from our community members recently. And we'd like to continue involving you and learning from you, even if we haven't welcomed you into our community yet. We need to. So the context that we're here today for many of you is this is nationally specific, but you may have something relevant to you if you're working outside of the United States. But in the United States of America, where many of our clients or users live and work, in 2024, the United States Department of Justice published what's called a final rule. And that means there is what's already an existing law in the United States called the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it says, here's what the law is for how people with disabilities must be treated. These are their basic civil rights. And in that law, there's Title II, which talks about digital accessibility and other kinds of things. And so the Department of Justice is responsible for issuing rules and regulations for what that law means and how it needs to be enacted and enforced across the country. So they did that. And in that rule, they said any web content provided by state and local governments must meet or should meet the WCAG 2.1 level AA guidelines by April 24th, 2026, if that government serves 50,000 or more people. If it's a smaller government or a special government, they have an extra year to meet compliance. These regulations, this rule, applies to all public universities in the United States. And it includes content shared in their learning management systems. Many of you are affected by this rule and regulation or have been thinking about it and have been working hard to figure out how will our institution comply? How will we help conform with the law and not just conform to the letter of law, but be more inclusive and welcoming for people of different abilities. So WCAG 2.1 AA refers to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. 2.1 is a standard and AA is the level of compliance. This is kind of arcane knowledge. It's a little bit of specialist knowledge. And most ordinary teachers probably aren't experts in citing WCAG 2.1 level A or AA, but some of these things are principles and some of them we can learn more about and become responsible for. So there are, with this rule and regulation, there were also some exceptions that were specified. Some of those exceptions include archived web content and pre-existing conventional electronic documents, i.e. old PDFs that you've had on your website for years. So there are some exceptions, reasonable exceptions, but generally this is the rule that's about to go into effect. And we know that many of you are thinking about wanting to conform with that rule, and we care about this as well. So with that as the context, at Pressbooks, we believe that making Pressbooks itself and all of the content published in it, making that content accessible and inclusive is a shared responsibility between us as the software provider and the platform provider, and you, the authors and publishers who write the content and update and maintain the content. So when we're evaluating, when you or any of us are evaluating web accessibility for content published online, I have a typo there, with a content management system like Pressbooks, there's two main components that we want to be looking at. One is the publishing platform itself, including the reading interface, and the other is the content that goes into that publishing platform. And that's something that the authors are responsible for. On the question of the platform, Pressbooks, we take responsibility for ensuring that the authoring tools that you use are themselves accessible and comply with WCAG standards. We actually do 2.2 level AA, but at least the minimum required by the federal law in the United States. And we take responsibility to ensure that the reading interface itself meets those same standards. How do we do this? Well, our team develops internal expertise and promises that any new code we release meets that standard. We also regularly hire professional experts that don't work full-time at Pressbooks. And we've been working with the Inclusive Design Research Center. They're big leaders in this field in Canada, where Pressbooks is headquartered. We hire them to provide professional audits and testing of our software. And we do it regularly because we release new software regularly. In conjunction with them, we update what's called a VPAT report. If you don't know what a VPAT report it's a voluntary product accessibility template. And it's a form that tool providers or software providers or vendors can fill out that tell you, here's how our platform does on the WCAG standards. It's self-administered, so some platforms are great and do it really well. Some platforms will tell you that they're great, but it's marketing material, like there's a range of responses to this. We try to be honest and clear with our VPATs and stand behind that work. We have recent VPATs that we update regularly for both the authoring platform and the reading interface. They're linked here, they're available on our website, and we welcome questions about them from anyone at any time. We also have a roadmap, an accessibility roadmap. This describes, here are the known issues that we are aware of in the platform that we are wanting to improve on and work on. This roadmap gets updated as we fix things and as we become aware of new things, and we are responsive to things that people tell us. If you know of any issue that affects accessibility or inclusion for our platform or our reading interface, we want to know about it. There's a way that you can report it on our website, or if you're comfortable working in GitHub, we can bring you into GitHub, which is where we do a lot of our software development. So that's our commitment, and this is what we do. These are the practices that we try to use to show that we take that commitment seriously. The other part of this was the content. So with the content, authors and publishers, you are responsible for ensuring that the content you publish to the web is accessible and hopefully inclusive. Wherever possible, we try to do what we can to make sure that accessibility is the default. If you're just using Pressbooks, I don't want to say normally because there is no normal use, but in a standard way, it should be accessible by default. You still have to make some good choices. And what we try to do are provide a few things to help you in that process. First, we have guides in the Pressbooks User Guide that talk about, here's our advice for making content accessible and inclusive. We link out to other guides and other resources maintained by other organizations and people who are experts that also can be useful to inform you and your authors about good practices. We provide every month, we offer 3 free trainings for our end users. And the third of those trainings is especially focused on preparing your content for publication. It covers things like proofreading, like editorial checks, like checking for accessibility, checking for broken links and those kinds of things. So every month we offer that webinar, and we will continue to do so. Your end users, anybody can sign up for free and attend those, and attend a live session with a knowledgeable person who talked honestly about how to do it in the platform. A third thing that we've just recently started doing, in order to help people comply with the law, we do allow publishers or network managers to archive books that are no longer being updated. Those books remain public. They can still be read and still be accessed, but they're clearly marked as archived and no longer being maintained. Rather than deleting them, if you're not able to bring it into compliance, you can archive it. So that's an option for people. And we have a whole new suite of tools that we're really excited about that we believe can help any author or any publisher make their content more accessible, more easily, without having to be an expert in WCAG 2.1 AA standards. And that's called the Content Toolkit. So I'll show you a little bit of each of those things here in turn. So the first thing I'll show is if you are a publisher or a network manager and you want to know what I mean by marking a book as archived, this is what the Pressbooks book list looks like for network managers. And you can see, if you can't see the image, I'll describe it. So there is a table that shows the cover of a book, the title of a book, when it was last edited, created, etc. And there's a column that says whether the book is public or not, whether it's in your catalog or not, and whether or not it is archived. So here I have an example of a book that is both marked as public and marked as archived. It's very easy for the publisher to go in and click a button to mark a book as archived without affecting its publication status, or to select many books at a time and do a bulk action, which is archive 10 at a time, or what have you. So that's something that you can do right now, today in Pressbooks. And if you do choose to do that, what you will see is on the book homepage, there will be a simple banner. And the banner announces to everybody who visits the book, this book was archived by its publisher on the date you took that action. It is no longer being updated. If you have specific details, maybe you've replaced it with something else, maybe you have something else you want to tell people, it's a good idea to put it in the book description down below to let them know this book, why it was archived, or where you could find an update or a maintained version, but that's entirely up to you. This message is consistent and always applied by us. Your message is up to you. If you visit a book page, an individual chapter of the book, you'll see that same banner. So it appears everywhere you go on the book, so that anyone who visits clearly sees right away that the content is archived. We believe this will help you comply with the federal rule and regulation, and without having to pull that content down off the web or make it unavailable. If the book is openly licensed, the other thing that's nice to know is, in this case, the book could have a Creative Commons license that allows it to be cloned. Archived books can still be cloned. They can still be copied, and whoever clones and copies it could take responsibility for maintaining and updating it, which means that the community can still be enriched, even if the original maintainer is no longer able to update and ensure that the book meets the relevant standards. If you have questions about that, you can talk to your network manager. If you are a network manager and have questions about it, you can talk to our premium support team. So what I want to do now is actually go into the live demo. So what I'm going to show you is the Content Toolkit. Here, I'm going to start from the perspective of a book author. Most people who are using Pressbooks are just authors or book administrators, and so I'm giving you a sample book dashboard. The first thing you'll notice is this is the standard editing authoring interface for authors in Pressbooks, and there's now a banner at the top of the page. This is a notification banner that's letting you know the Pressbooks Content Toolkit is now active on your book. The toolkit can help you find and fix potential accessibility issues and identify broken links. There's two components to that I'll demo: Accessibility Assist and Link Checker. Each of these are links to our guide chapters. So if you click this link, you will go to the chapter that explains how to use the Accessibility Assist features, and you can read all about it in the guide. If you click this link, you will go to the chapter that's all about how to use the link checker tool and read the chapter about it in the guide. Once you're comfortable and familiar, you say, I don't want to see that banner anymore. You, as a user, can dismiss the banner and it will go away and not come back. So you have control about whether you see that or whether you don't. So the first thing that I want to look at is, what does it feel like to use the Accessibility Assist tool while I'm editing content in a book? This tool is designed to help authors as they go identify and fix accessibility issues rather than remediate them. It's better to do it right than to remediate it later. So here, I'm going to come into a book that I've created, and I'm going to go to the Organize menu. This is showing me all the content in the book. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click the Edit button and view my introduction. So here I am in the editor. And what you'll notice is in the bottom right, there's a small widget that appears here. This is the Accessibility Assist tool appearing in the visual editor. And right now there's a blue check mark, and that's good. It means I don't have any issues on this page. Great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Next and go to my next chapter or the next piece of content in the book. And here you'll see a slightly different view. You'll see I've got a yellow indicator, which means I do have issues, but they're not necessarily fatal. And I have a number, 6. I also see in the visual editor, I have these little tooltips. So these question marks and these tooltips. Many people feel like, I'm just trying to write my book. This tooltip keeps getting in the way. If you feel that way, you can click X to close it, and there's a flag. Clicking the flag means I don't want to see the tooltips while I edit. I want to just edit. Clicking the flag again says I do want to see the tooltip because what I'm interested in doing is understanding what they are and fixing them. So let's look at this first one. If I hover over it or I click it, it says manual check. Is the linked document accessible? Well, this refers to one of the WCAG guidelines. You don't need to know that it's a WCAG guideline or which one. You need to know, is the linked document accessible? So this tool is trying to provide guidance for authors in language that they can understand. We're using an open source tool called Editorially for this. It was developed at Princeton University, mainly by John Jameson, and we have brought this into Pressbooks and adapted it for this context. We've really enjoyed working with John and are grateful to the great work that he and others have done to make this open source tool available, and we're incorporating it into our open source platform. That's the technology choices we've made. So here, is the linked document accessible? Well, I don't know. I have to open the document and find out. In this scenario, I'm going to say, yeah, I did. I made sure that that PDF was accessible before I uploaded it. So I'm going to say mark as okay. And you'll notice that my count went from 6 to 5, and that issue was marked as okay. Let's go to the next one. Should this be a heading? What do you mean? Well, this is all bold line of text. It appears to be a heading, but it's not actually marked as a heading in the HTML. Well, you're right. That probably should have been a heading. My title was the heading level 1. So this probably should have been a heading level 2. So I'm going to select this text and I'm going to notice, let's make this a heading level 2. And right away, that alert went away because I fixed that issue. I made it into a heading. So this is an example of the kinds of things that you can do. Authors, as they go, can work and fix this. This is telling me your link text looks like a URL. That's not a good practice, and here's why. Instead, why don't you give it a meaningful descriptor so that it's read meaningfully for people that use assistive technology, and have the URL as just part of the reference for the link. That's great advice. In this case, I'm going to mark this one as ignored. And it went away. I didn't fix it. I just marked it as ignored. So those are the 3 different kinds of things you can do. Mark it as ignored, mark it as okay, or fix it. Those issues we saw were all manual checks that you required a human with knowledge to make a decision. This is not AI powered. This is software powered, but it requires humans with wisdom to use this responsibly. Once I've done those things, I'm going to go ahead and say, let's click save and save those changes. And let's move on to the next chapter. What I'm going to show you in the next chapter is a chapter that's really a mess. So this chapter is pretty good. Hopefully this won't happen for you, but this is a demo chapter designed to be a big mess. Here you see I have 19 issues and the color is red, not yellow. It's red because these yellow alerts were all manual checks. The red alert means it's not a manual check. It's actually a problem. This is the tool believes you have an actual issue that isn't just fix this if you want. It's please fix this because it's an accessibility issue. So here, it's kind of hard for me to figure out and see what's going on here. Instead of working in the visual editor, for this one, I want to click the preview button. The preview button will show me what the actual chapter looks like in the rendered view. And I find this sometimes more helpful just to get a sense of what all the issues are. You'll notice because I am a logged in user, I will also see this widget. And it's the same widget I saw in the visual editor. And here I'm going to click, go to the first alert. Is this uppercase text needed? You're probably right. I don't. Let's navigate to the next issue. A heading tag without any text. That's bad. And it's telling me why this is bad and what I should do. So I don't really understand how headings are being used in this chapter. So editorially will give me a helper for that. Over here, I'll say check headings and alt text. And the first option is let's look at headings. When I click that button, what you can see is a little overlay that will just give you at a glance the visual structure of all of the headings on your page. This element appears in H1. Great. This is an H2. Great. This one below it, H3, that seems to make sense. H2, but there's no text. Ah, that's my problem. H3 has text. Oops. Let me actually turn these alerts off so that's a little, I can't see the headings without doing it. So then I jump all the way to an H6. Right away, just visually, I can see, all right, I skipped a heading level. This should have been an H3 or maybe an H4, and this one is empty. So this heading tool also lets me look and see, here's my heading structure. Wait a minute, this one seems out of order, H4. Let me click on this and it will jump right to the heading and let me see where that's at in the document. So you can do it from the document, or you can do it from the heading tool here. Headings are a really common accessibility problem, and they can be confusing for folks. So these tools try to make it easier to understand what's the heading structure actually in my document and how can I fix it quickly. If you've worked with accessibility and content authors before, you know one of the other really big issues is how to make images, visual content accessible. The general rule of thumb is when you put an image in the text, you want to provide something called alt text, and that's the alternative description. Not everybody who visits the web has the same visual acuity. Some people can't see images or have low vision and struggle to see them, or some people just prefer to have a tool read everything to them rather than look with their eyes for whatever reason. If you add alt text and you're using software that reads a web page, it will read the description instead of just saying image. And that's better, a better experience for someone who doesn't see or prefers to have the website read. So that's a really common problem. When you make an image, a lot of people just upload the image and forget. I have to consider the needs of people who don't see. To consider those needs, I need to provide a written description of what this image contains. That's called the alt text. So here I can see every image in my page and whether it has alt text and what the alt text is. So here, for example, I jump to this. There's an image here, and it is this particular image. And the alt text says, a construction worker is holding a sign that says under construction. The sign has yellow and black strips and a small blinking orange light. It looks like a website from the 90s. I jump here. This is the same image, but it has no alt text. So you can see that this will help you identify which images have alt text, which don't, and more quickly fix them. So those are some of the features that you'll see in the what we call Accessibility Assist Author tool. The other thing that this will do is, as you work and as you go, in order to generate a report for your book, you have to view the content as a logged in user. Viewing this content as a logged in user will save all of these issues to a general accessibility report for your book. And that looks like this. You can get to it from that link that I just clicked, or anytime you're in your book, in the dashboard, you can come to Content Toolkit and click Accessibility Report. This right here will show me, here's all of the issues that we know about that are live in your book. Well, you can see they're all from a single chapter. I haven't opened all the rest of the chapters. I could manually open every single chapter in the book and take an hour and populate this report. Or what we'll let you do is click a single button and scan the whole book. So I just click the button and now it's performing a scan for me. This scan might take a little bit of time to complete. So I could leave this page, I could go work on a chapter, I could come back, I can do whatever I want. If I want to also, I could click this button and say, just send me an email when it's done and I'll move on to other things. So authors at any time can request a fully automated scan to update the entire report for their book. The goal here is I want to see all the reports without having to click every page individually. You'd most commonly use this when you have a book that's already in progress or a book maybe that's been completed that you didn't do an accessibility audit or scan on while you were writing. So what I'll show is this check and scan is running, and while I'm waiting for it to complete, I'll show you what the report does include because we have some alerts in it. The first thing that you'll see are the recent alerts. Here's a sequential list of all the things that have been detected in the book, when it was detected, what page it's on, the URL for it, and what type of alert it was, how many of them there were, and what kind of thing was it. It was a post and it was published. So in Pressbooks, they'll all be posts, and it could either be a published page or a draft page. It helps you know urgency and priority. The next table you'll see is which pages have the highest number of alerts or issues. Right now, I only have one, but we can sort them and say, this is the highest priority chapter for me to work on because there's 19 issues on that page, and it's a published page. Once the full report is populated, you'll see a little bit more information that'll be more helpful. The third thing that we'll see are the types of alerts, and this will aggregate it across the whole book. What are the most common accessibility issues that are present in this book? And this will help you know if I'm working with an author team, where do they need training? Where do they need support? What's the problem there? What are the issues they're introducing most often in this book? So that's very helpful. And down at the bottom, you can see the recent dismissals. You saw me earlier mark an issue as okay, saying it wasn't a problem. Well, guess who did that? Steele did it. And I can go look and see, was he in fact right? And then Steele also marked one of these issues to be hidden. And I could go back and I could unhide it or undismiss it. So you have basically like an audit trail for decisions that people make about manual checks in case you make sure that you didn't do that in error. The great part about this also is the whole report can be downloaded as a CSV. This page and this report will be active as long as you have the Content Toolkit on. If you decide you're going to turn the Content Toolkit off or you don't want it on your network, you have the ability to download these results and save the report, even if this page goes away and you don't keep it. We really, really, really think you should keep it. This is a useful tool, and anybody who's publishing content, we hope that you include this, but we know that it's up to you and your authors whether you want this feature on your network, so make that choice accordingly. I will wait for this scan to complete, and I'll pause and say, do I have any questions and things that in the chat that I need to take a look at? A way to restart the scan? Yeah. So the way this works is you'll notice this check is still in progress. This is a pretty big book. This is running in a queue process where many, many pages and chapters. I think in some cases it can take 5, 10, maybe even more minutes to complete, depending on how many other scans have also been requested from all of the other Pressbooks networks that we host. So I do think notifying me by email is a nice feature to have. I probably should have done this in advance rather than doing it in a live demo, but I'll come back to this a little bit later. And the answer is you can always click, if it gets stalled and stuck on this and it's taking longer than you think it ought to, like if it's been several hours and you still haven't received the email, that's a situation where you may want to contact Premium Support and say, hey, can you just check on the status of this? Is it still in the queue or did it fail without notice? We think we have good error handling and we aren't observing jobs that are failing without notice at this point, but this is still in a free trial period. And so there are always things that we're learning and we want to make sure that they're learned and fixed before we do. So if you catch a bug or you see something, just say something, let us know. So the next thing I want to show is, so this is what it looks like to do the accessibility checking and the accessibility report. I want to transition now and say, if you are a publisher or you run a publishing network, we also want to provide tools for you that give you visibility, not just into a single book, but to all the books on your network. And the way to do that is if you come in and if you are a network manager, you'll have a special panel that only you have, your regular end users don't have. It's called Administer Network. From that panel, there is a books item in your menu. And from that item, there is something called the Network Book Scanner. This is also new. You'll notice when you log in as a network manager, you'll see your own little banner here. And instead of telling you about the tools for authors, we're telling you about the tool for you, which is called the Network Book Scanner. There is a guide chapter here that explains everything that I will demo and how to use it. Each of these guide chapters that we mentioned have short videos. So if you find my demo here confusing, we have short focused videos. If I've understood that and ready to dismiss it, let's dismiss it, clean up my dashboard. And what we're seeing here is this is a book list that shows you every book on your network. Here's the cover, here's the title. If you have a shared network used by many institutions, it will tell you which institution the book belongs to. It will tell you the word count. It will tell you whether or not the book is public or private. And then it will show you when's the last time someone ran an accessibility scan or a scan for broken links and how many issues were found there. So let's look at my book. It was Open Education. So I'm going to search for Open. And here we'll see, oh, here's that book. I ran a link checker scan earlier today, and I remember doing it. Steele did it, and he found 16 issues. So let's see what was happening for that book. So I could click this link, and this would take me to the link checker report for a book. Just like there's an accessibility report, we provide a link checker tool. The principle is the same. Authors can request new scans, and when you finish a scan, this is what a report looks like. It tells you when it was generated, how many links we analyzed, how many issues were found, and then I could download the report. I can see where the link was occurred, whether the chapter was public or private, what the content of that, the reference of the link was, what the text was, and what the error message or the status that our checking tool got when it found that link. All of these things can be filtered. So I might say, I really just want to look at this readings to consider inclusion chapter first. All right, I got 4 links that need to be taken a look at. And I want to look at only the 404 errors. Great, there's only one of them. And I could click this link and say, that page is not found. I better update that link. Okay. And then when I do, it would be cleared from the report. I can also clear those filters and say, let's do a different set. I only want to look for 404 errors anywhere in the book. And so here you can see I've got 9 of them, and I could download those, or I could fix and update them manually. So that's what the link checker does and what you can see there. If I come back to the network book scanner and I look at this chart, though, I could also say, I have this public book, or let me do a different example. I should have prepared this a little bit better. Let me sort this and look at only my public books. I got 3 public books, and these 2 public books have never had an accessibility scan run for them. I probably ought to, since they're public. So what I can do is I could click these 2 books, and I could say, let's run an accessibility scan for those books. Or let's run a link checker scan, or let's run both. In this case, I'm just going to do the accessibility scan for both, and I'm going to click apply. So what's going to happen is this page will refresh, and we'll say, oh, you don't just have 1 job in progress, the one you started earlier. There's now 3 scans in progress. And when they're done, that information will be updated. And so that's more or less how network managers can use this tool to request scans and updates. Currently, for the duration of the trial, we have daily limits on how many scans you can request as we're learning more about server performance and your needs. Those limits are each network can request 20 total scans per day. And each book, a book admin can request 2 total scans per day of either the network, link checker, or accessibility type, or 2 of the same kind per day. And those limits reset every day. If you need to adjust the limits, that's something you can talk about with your account manager or bring up with us, but those are the limits currently during the free trial.
You said earlier that there's a monthly accessibility training, and that authors at CUNY, for example, could use. And does that assume that the accessibility, that is available to our authors?
Yes.
Does the trainer assume the availability of that tool?
Yes. So the training that I mentioned, the 3rd training, is not just about accessibility. That training is about publishing and preparing your content for distribution. And so one of the topics covered is accessibility. Before we released the Content Toolkit, it was about how you could do this with a lot of other tools that weren't built into Pressbooks. Now it will be primarily about how you can do it with the integrated tools, but we still have references to the non-Pressbooks tools because we know, some institutions have their own subscription to their own accessibility checking scanning platform that they prefer to use. Well, obviously, the content creators and the institutions know what's best for them, so they don't have to do it our way. So we'll mention those things and we'll refer to other ways, and we'll try to answer questions honestly about anything we have knowledge about. If it's somebody else's product, we probably won't know as much about it as our own, but that's what happens in those webinars and those sessions. Great question. Thanks.
There are a bunch of questions in the chat. If you scroll up it, there's maybe 4 or 5 unanswered questions. Maybe we tackle those and then hand over to John.
Okay, I'm going to start. The first question I see was from Sayed. Is that the first one I want to look at? Okay. So Sayed asks, if you can't see the chat, Sayed asks, I have a question about archiving and related legal considerations. If a book is archived and displays the banner indicated it is no longer being updated, can it remain in the catalog for continued access and potential adaptations? Or should it be removed from the catalog and made available only via direct URL? So my answer to this is not legal advice, but my answer is yes, absolutely. You can leave archived books in your catalog. There's no problem doing that. They're still public, they're still available. Anytime someone visits the link from your catalog, they will see right away that it's no longer being updated. They might have whatever feelings they have about that, but there's no legal reason or reason from my point of view that I can see that you would need to remove it from your catalog. That's a publisher preference. You decide what goes in your catalog. You may prefer only to have books that are currently being actively updated. if you think about it like the way that a traditional publisher might, I go to publishers' websites all the time and I see books that are out of print. They're still listed on their website and I can still see it. I just can't order it. I can't buy it. But so it's really a decision for the publisher to make. That's my view. I hope that answered that question, Say it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally
nice
makes
to see
sense.
you.
Nice to
Okay.
see you.
Hey. Amy Hofer, is that a question or just an observation? Should I read that one aloud? Amy was finding the reports were less useful because I need to look at every page. The checker is inconsistent in certain things like flagging headers, etc. So to keep things consistent, I've been going through every page. Those things we did observe and notice from the initial trial and pilot. Amy, we have rolled out a bunch of updates that hopefully improves this experience and does make it more consistent. I think if you retry and rerun a scan, you'll find that they're more consistent. If you still notice inconsistencies, report them to us right away. We're actively working on fixing as much as we can before the trial ends. Thank you, Amy. One of the accessibility errors, okay, Andrea writes, one of the accessibility errors I found is opening a new window expected? I previously learned from our accessibility designers that the default should be to open a new window. Which way is correct? Should it default to a new window or a same window, and why? That's a great question, Andrea. Most accessibility advocates, I think, will tell you, for most links, most of the time, the best practice is not to open in a new tab or a new window. Opening in a new tab or a new window, especially when it's not announced, can be confusing and disorienting, especially for users of assistive technology. So the best practice is do not open in a new tab or a new window. If you do need to open a new tab or a new window, announce to users in some way, visually or to assistive technology, that this link does open in a new tab or a new window. So we've recently made changes to Pressbooks where we will announce to screen readers, if you choose to do that, it does open in a new window, and we have a little visual icon to show that. We're trying to use an accessible pattern to announce it, but our advice would be don't unless you really, really need to. Barb says, what about using the H5P plugin? This doesn't seem to be accessible. That's a really broad question. I would say I'll try to answer precisely, and it may not be satisfying, but I'll try to answer precisely. So the H5P is an open source plugin that Pressbooks has integrated into its platform. It allows you to build and create interactive content types like quizzes and other types of material. By default, the open source plugin lets you make 50-something different content types. Many, but not all, of those content types are, in fact, or let's say, I should say, most of those content types absolutely can be made accessible, the content you publish. Some of them, it's very difficult or almost impossible to make them accessible. For example, there is a speak the words activity that requires a person to record their voice. Well, how do you make that accessible for someone who cannot speak the words? Or there's an image drag and drop activity that requires a person both to see images and perform mouse operations where they have to drag and drop. That activity is almost impossible to make fully accessible. So we would advise people, do not use those activity types. Don't build those activity types. And we have a list in our guide of the recommended H5P activity types. We're trying to work with H5P as well so that we can constrain and limit the types of activities we make available on our sites, because we don't want our authors to even have the choice to make content types that cannot be made accessible. The second part of that is, that's the platform piece. If you pick an activity type that can be made accessible, that doesn't guarantee it will be accessible. So with any of these H5P activity types, for example, if you put an image in your H5P activity type, you still have to make the same content decisions you would make in Pressbooks to make sure that the result is accessible. There are some tools that do help you to check your H5P activities to see whether the content is accessible. There's one, it's called the H5P Caretaker. It allows you to upload your H5P activity and we'll check it for accessibility and other kinds of issues. It's a free open source standalone tool that was developed by NDLA, the Norwegian government, and we think it's great, and we are hoping to integrate that more tightly into Pressbooks as well. And John already linked to it. Thank you, John. So our answer there is H5P can totally be made accessible, but choose the right types, and make accessible choices. If you're aware of other things that you think I'm misrepresenting, please tell us. We'll research them. We'll do our best to give you honest answers about them.
Jamie does say one of our book admins ran the scan to double check after fixing page by page. It gave her errors and she started fixing them again. It created copies of every page she fixed. Has that been reported by anyone else?
Is this which scan are we referring to, Jamie? Are you able to come off?
Yes, it was the accessibility scan tool.
So Jamie asked, one of our book admins ran the scan after fixing things page by page. It gave her errors and she started fixing them again. It created copies of every page she fixed. So that should never happen. And I don't know the mechanism by which it could happen, because when we run an accessibility scan, we don't actually modify or touch the content in any way. Instead, what we do is we have basically a robot user that is logged into the network that opens, all it does is it opens the page as a logged in user and runs the scan and stores it to the database. Opens the page, finds any issues, stores it to the database. Opens the page, finds any issues, stores it to the database. It's exactly the behavior that happens when a logged in user views the page, but without requiring the logged in user to do it. So none of your content will ever even can be edited, because that robot doesn't have the ability to edit content. It doesn't have the ability to alter content. All it has the ability to do is open the page, which triggers the database write about the accessibility issues. So if that in fact did happen, that sounds very odd and we need to look into what happened, but I think there may be something else at play in that particular case.
Okay, we thought so too, and I was unable to recreate it, so that's why I haven't submitted a ticket yet. I'm still
I think it might,
investigating.
yeah. Okay, so maybe what happened was in the import or the cloning process, they might have accidentally done things multiple times and didn't realize it, and then only cleaned up one set. I don't know. I'm just
Perhaps.
speculating. I was speaking about knowledge there.
It's okay. Thank you.
All right, I've done a lot of talking, and there's not much time left, and I really would like to pass it over to my colleague John to talk. So there was another question, which was for Melissa. Are all these accessibility features only available via an editorially subscription, or any of these features free? Well, the good news is, no, you don't need an editorially subscription of any kind. What you need is an enterprise Pressbooks license and the use of the Content Toolkit. And John will explain what that means and the implications for our existing clients now.
Okay, thanks, Steele. I do want to just cover this, and if you do have questions, we'll stay on a brief time, but in order to get you done at the top of the hour, I'll just go through this real quick. So right now, the full Content Toolkit is currently active on all enterprise Pressbooks networks. It's active through the 26th of February. And all book admins, editors, network and institutional managers can try the tools out. In order to protect our network performance so that the scans didn't affect readers at all, we've limited the total number of networks scans to 2 per book per day and 20 total scans on a network per day. So we can adjust these. If you need more, reach out to your account manager and we'll work with you to get what you need, bearing in mind that we just want to monitor this so we don't affect reader activity. Then network managers can opt in to keep the toolkit active. There is a fee I'll discuss after the free trial. If not, we will turn it off after the 26th. So if after the 26th, so in March or April, if you would like to activate the toolkit, it's been turned off, but you've gotten clearance to activate the toolkit, whether you're from your admin or not. If you go to the integrations page and your network manager view, you'll see this content toolkit area. Where you can directly, if you want to turn on the accessibility authoring tool, you can contact your account manager through that link, or you can request activation. That will notify your account manager and notify our support team that the Content Toolkit bundle has been requested, and we'll reach out to you just to confirm and then activate it on your network. The pricing. So as we discussed previously, Accessibility Assist authoring tool is on a single network, $2.99. On a shared network now, it's $4.99. Those are per year. And then the whole bundle for the Content Toolkit, which includes the Author Assist tool, the accessibility scanner, the link checker, and then the network level book scanner tools. We are doing kind of a tiered price. So if you have 1 to 25 books on your network, $799 a year, up to greater than 200 books on your network, the bundle is $17.99. We've done this so that we could provide this, and if you have more books on your network and you will be using these tools, it does impact our network usage, and so we've tried to account for that. We can prorate the cost for the remainder of the current year. So if it's a little while to your renewal and you'd like to get going with it right away, we can prorate the cost. We'll talk with you about that to find out what's best for you and for your accounts payable. So thank you. Thank you very much for attending. If you have any questions, Jen Martin is our marketing manager. That's her email. Steele, of course, everyone knows Steele's email. And I'm available at john@pressbooks.com. If you have any specific questions, we're happy to help.